This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're listening to We All Be News, news-free Dixie for the 21st century.
We All Be is proud to have on Brother Ronell Collins, who is the nephew of the late, great Malcolm X, and whose mom is also Sister Ella Mae Collins, who was a great sponsor of Brother Malcolm throughout his lifetime and his important work. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Fine, brother. Fine. How are you doing? Let me just correct you. It said not Ella Mae. That's a media. There was an Ella Mae. Her aunt. My mother's middle name was Lee. She was named after her father's middle name, Earl Lee Little, and so they gave her the Lee, Ella Lee Little.
Oh, sorry about that. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much. How are you doing tonight?
Fine, thank you. Fine, thank you. You and your audience, thank you so much.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about what happened. It didn't get a lot of media exposure over here, but the 50th anniversary of Malcolm X's famous Oxford speech took place, I believe, in December 4th, 1964, at Oxford University.
December 3rd, 1964, Oxford University, Oxford Union.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that because a lot of people have not really heard of that speech over in the States or its impact. Can you tell us a little bit about that speech?
Yes, my brother. I have not even heard the speech in its entirety, let alone the audio-video version of that speech in its entirety. It was deliberate. The university Oxford University did not want that speech broadcast out worldwide, the audio-visual portion of it. So because the impact that it had at Oxford after and in England on racism and immigration, it was profound, and it had impact on the students there at the time who became civic and world leaders around the world in Africa and Asia and South America, and I've had the opportunity to meet some of those former students and the students of today and what their activism, even now when they heard Malcolm's speech this past December when I was there for a week of symposiums and panel discussions on Malcolm, and also in Brixton, England. The impact now is more potent than it was then because there hasn't been anything in England or Europe like Malcolm. And so this audio-visual that we saw now in December 2014, it had a great impact on a young audience there today, and it really energized them to take more action. They were surprised. They didn't know this man existed. They didn't know such a human being had this much courage in that day and time. It's just, they were profound. And here I speak of the young black and white. At this time, Malcolm, as I said before, the debate was won on Malcolm, his debate that he had given at that time, extremism in defense of liberty is no vice, and moderation in pursuit of justice is no virtue. He didn't win it at that time, and he wasn't interested in winning a debate at Oxford. He was interested in getting the message out to the world that this is a institutional problem of racism worldwide. So that was a area to get his message out to future leaders, because Oxford University is and was the leading institution for colonialist leaders of the world. Then they produce leaders from Oxford to go out and rule the world. You need to study that. There's quite a bit of literature on that. And so that's very interesting, Malcolm's impact that he had then and now, and that's why he went there.
It is very interesting to hear about that. I know I saw a little snippet of it once in the Eyes on the Prize documentary series, but I never heard the full speech in its entirety. But you're saying that it did have an effect on world politics, on geopolitical issues.
Oh, definitely, definitely. They did not want that speech broadcast worldwide at that time, let alone, think about it, brother. You have an institution, the world's leading English-speaking institution, Oxford. Oxford was set up by King Henry in the 15th century going forward to produce, this is documented, I have some documentation on that. You can research it if you will do your research, that they wanted to raise leaders, black and white, to rule the colonies under English philosophy, philosophical, and ideological ideas, to indoctrinate you, brown, black, and yellow, to go back to the colonies and rule them the way we want you to rule, the way we want you to think, not that you would have a mind of your own. And Malcolm addressed this at Oxford, and it was too profound to let, in 1964, when nations were fighting for independence, and few were just coming on from independence and still fighting, these Europeans, they didn't want to let this out. And they certainly didn't want to have it out in America. It's perhaps addressing the issue of racism is better than any speech made by President Lincoln or Thomas Jefferson. It is something that everyone needs to hear, and I hope that at Oxford and Professor Stephen Tuck, we can get to this country the audio-visual broadcast where our people can hear it, because you won't have it on the Internet. It hasn't been on the Internet just now, so I don't see it happening. But if you listen to it, it's profound. It's profound. And as I said, it was a stage for him to get his message across before he was to take the United Nations to the UN World Court. It was one of the procedures that he was pursuing at that time, and stabbing the knife into the colonialist power, and that was the best place that you could do it, was Oxford University.
Hey, speaking of Oxford University, I just found it rather odd that they could not put out the entire speech via internet. They're such a venerable institution with so many resources. What is the reason they gave for not having the whole speech out there? Because I know I look at, for example, UCLA. They got an archive of famous public speakers that came to UCLA back in the 60s and 70s, and they have that out on the internet now via YouTube. I mean, all the speeches.
Well, you have to remember, brother, the English, I just said, this was the preeminent. There is no, this is, the Oxford University is like going to the Heaven's Gate and sitting down with St. Peter before you can enter. Okay? These people were colonialists. The English ruled almost two-thirds of the planet. They were still ruling quite a bit of the planet in 1964. So it wasn't, it was difficult. There were a whole lot of blockage to get Malcolm there at the time, as it were. They did not expect, and as you heard, if you got some of that on the BBC 4 documentary, the attitudes of these lords and PMs, their ideas, but you should read some of the press. They did not believe that a black man had this kind of intellect. They believed in their own folly, that they were the brightest gnat on the wall in the room. You know, they believed in their own folly. But when it came out and it was listened to, they did not intend for it to be a world broadcast in any shape or form or fashion. It's too dangerous. It's too dangerous. And J. Edgar Hoover did not even believe it. He wanted to know why Malcolm, what's he doing at Oxford? How can he be there when others, leaders of the world, how dare they? J. Edgar Hoover's comments. And they had sent people there at the time. We were able to get some of that text while I was at Oxford, and I had the opportunity to read some of that. So it was something that the United States could not have that broadcast made back here at that time. It was just too dangerous to broadcast. Too dangerous. And
what about now? What's the reason now, though? Like, why couldn't they put it out right?
Now, with the new administration there and the chancellor and the vice chancellor, there was a bit of a problem now, even, with the chancellor and the vice chancellor. And unfortunately, they had passed the buck down to a house Negro woman who didn't know what was going on. And she, the poor lady, she, as I understand it, was for a radio interview, was crying. She couldn't do the interview because of the chancellor who had said he was going to speak on the issue of housing and racism at Oxford up to the very few hours before. And then he sent a woman, a vice chancellor, and she had been not aware and unprepared. So she passed the buck to her house Negro. And the sister had no clue what was happening. So the interview didn't happen as it was supposed to go. So there was still a bit of, how I should say, kind to placate what was happening now, with not dealing with the racism at Oxford University. There was a brother there from Mississippi who was the first black Rhodes Scholar from Mississippi and the first scholar from Mississippi since 1907, period, I believe. And then there was a brother there from, African brother from Kenya who had a problem on housing. He was approached by the proctors there, which is sort of the top security on campus, that when they came to show up for their dorm, they were very abusive to these brothers, thinking that they were there to servants or construction workers. They couldn't even get into their own dorm rooms. So that became an issue just before I came. And they didn't want
this stuff is about 1964. This is actually happening now.
This is happening now, today. It's before it was worse. And so it's coming about all this, the immigration problem in Europe, all across Europe, and then, the black male showing up, let alone the women. The best way to get to us as a people is through our women and our children. And, the story, if you teach a woman, you teach a nation.
Right.
The sister there also, who's a Rhodes Scholar from Africa, she had no problem. She's a beautiful sister. But where it works in Europe, like it works here, these people come along and, when they make, how they used to do our women back in slavery time. And that happens today. It still happens. If our women are not strong enough, and if our men are not strong enough to resist that, and when you see it, you take some sort of action. You just don't turn your head. Not my problem. And so that continues. It's no different. It's no different today than it was 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And, you see it here in America. So it still exists, and it exists at Oxford today. You can say that it is a little better, but like Malcolm said this, if you stab me in the back and you pull a knife out 1 inch and you call that progress, how is that progress? You stab me in my back and you pull the knife 1 inch, but I still have a knife in my back. The wounds are there and the knife is there. So how do you call that progress? This is what Malcolm was talking about. These Negroes going around here talking about, well, you hear it all the time. Well, we have come somewhere. We've come somewhere, and we were taken from somewhere to this country. We haven't been taken back to Africa and given due justice of what is ours and restored what has been taken. That has not been done, nor will it be done until we do it ourselves. And he talks about that then and now, but we want to beg and pray and hope and dream, but no one wants to put in the sweat equity and no one wants to pay the price to what you have to do. And Ferguson and these demonstrations are a primary example of that. And it's sad what happened with this Negro in New York, what he did with these police officers. But it shows you how a lot of us are sick just because somebody is in a uniform. You know, that's not the way you function just because somebody is in a uniform. Those police officers had nothing to do with the issue of what happened to those brothers in New York City or what happens anywhere. But we're quick to respond in this way, and it's deliberate. We know in some of these instances, these Negroes are put up to this, unbeknownst to them, to react in this way so they can call in the military or the army and do what they have to do to isolate us in our community and do harm. And, you know, it's done through our own people. It's done through our own people who look like us. It's done everywhere. It's done in Africa, Asia, and here. You don't have to have an army out anymore. You just get a few of our people that look like us and who distort the issue and lead us in the wrong direction. And Malcolm talks about this if you listen to his speeches. We have to critically analyze, no matter who they are, black, brown, green, red, or yellow. If you can't show me how to address an issue and to solve it, Malcolm showed you how to do that. We don't need any more speeches. He's made all the speeches that could ever be made on how to solve our problem. Dr. King recognized this in his last few years. Is what I said to you before. If you read Dr. King's last book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community, you would believe you're reading Malcolm X. This is why they had to kill Dr. King. And Dr. King and Malcolm were communicating secretly. And you'll hear more about that now, even publicly. You'll hear more about that because it's being exposed more and more each day. The intelligence services around the world found it necessary to kill Dr. King because he was becoming too much of the internationalists addressing the institutionalized racism around the world. It was not only an American problem. It was a world problem. And he was addressing it as well, like Malcolm. They had made that agreement through their connections to Clarence Jones and the senator that is now in Washington. He's well familiar with this from Georgia. I forgot his name right now.
John Lewis, the congressman? John Lewis?
Yes, he's familiar with a lot of things. But
I talked to Clarence Jones about that. He did say that there wasn't communication.
Yes, I know of it personally.
Yeah,
I know of it personally. But you know, you have the yin and yang and the pros and cons, and you play it like that. And they had that agreement. You know, good cop, bad cop. You know
exactly.
how that works.
Yeah, exactly. One thing about when I'm still seeing the stuff that's happened. You mentioned Europe, but what happened particularly this past week in Paris, France. I think about the Western civilization, the Western world talking about freedom of speech and whatnot. And they talking about Islamophobia and the fear of Islam, like it's like the Crusades all over again. I'm thinking that we need to hear the voice of Malcolm speaking in Oxford right now. We need to hear what Malcolm said about this 50 years ago with the immigration, with the racism, white supremacy, with the fear of Islam. We need to hear that.
Now. You need to hear that now. You're not getting it. They didn't want it. Fortunately, we could get this little bit. What this European man has done, Professor Stephen Tuck, who's Director of Humanities there, they're as I said, those that look like us are more white-minded than anything. But those that are white, that look white, are not thinking like white folks have in the past. They're thinking human. And this man has put his humanity behind his work. Think of this now. Nowhere in America in 50 years, my brother, with all the American English-speaking publications, as I said before, has anyone taken 3 areas of Malcolm's work or speeches and put it into context of the racist problems and inhumanity that exist in America and the world? But this man, 50 publications, Everybody deals with, well, how Malcolm, he came up, he was in prison, he found Islam or the nation, and this was happening then, and some little trivial, this Manny Marable's book that is so reinvented. It is an invention, created some Malcolm, but it's not Manny Marable. It's the people behind it, like this Robert Cohen. It's a committee of people who put a book, a compilation of several books, lies and innuendos and possibilities, and so much, even the dates are wrong. They couldn't even get my mother's medical record straight. So it just, and that's deliberate. That was deliberate. It's put out as the definitive book, but there's nothing scholarly about this work because it does not put it's a whole violation of scholarly work, what has been put out supposedly by Manny Marable, because it doesn't deal and address the issues that Malcolm was talking about and his solutions and what happens. It deals with everything else but that. The bibliography is in there and the so-called sources, but they're not quoting the sources correctly, and they're not speaking anything. There's so much misstatements and misquotes and lies and dates. It's just ridiculous. So this book by Stephen Tuck, The Night Malcolm X Spoke at Oxford, has had a profound impact on the world as far as his speech that he made then on world leaders. And I've had an opportunity to speak to a few of those. And on this February, your audience should know, February 21st of this year at 2 p.m., there will be a 5-hour service and speeches and lectures on Malcolm at the Malcolm X Dr. Betty Shabazz Cultural Center on Broadway in New York City, February 21st, 2:00 p.m. So I hope your audience will come. We'll try to fit everyone in. We hope to do a stream broadcast, and there will be a press release going out. I hope that by that time we'll have maybe the Oxford speech of Malcolm, the audio-visual I'm speaking of, where we can show it here, but it's a matter of getting the release from Oxford, which seems to be right now pretty much impossible. But we'll see what happens. I
know this speech needs to be released. I just think it's just weird. But also, I mean, like, I want to ask you this as well about a book that came out recently, the Malcolm X Diary book. What are your thoughts about that book?
As far as I know, my cousins, Malcolm's daughters, had put a court order on it because he did not have the permission. So as far as I know, the book hasn't been published yet, to my knowledge. As of, a couple of months ago, it was still being held up in court. I don't know where that is right now. I haven't...
They made copies. I mean, copies got out. I mean, they published it. I think it got cleared up because I know I went to Yasha, I don't know, Shabazz website, and she got the book listed as one of her books. I think it just became available not too long ago.
Her website has it, then if her website has it, they've come to some kind of agreement. That's good.
Okay. Well, actually, like, what's going on? Like, I look at the King estate, like the movie Selma came out, and they could not get the speeches from Dr. King because the King estate wanted so much money for him, I guess. What is, like, I look at the King estate versus the Malcolm, what's going on with Malcolm, because, like, everybody got access to Malcolm stuff, like his speeches, his image. I mean, what's the situation with that versus the King estate? Well, like they got a lot of control over this stuff. There
is a problem. And has to be worked out, and they're trying to work out the problem. As you said, the King estate is similar. The estate is supposed to have, I mean, you can't have, let me give you an example. When I was at the court hearing, or the trial, when Mrs. King was alive, the court trial on Dr. King's papers was held here in Boston, Massachusetts. Do your research history. The papers, supposedly Dr. King had sent these works up to Boston University. And before he died, he was still sending papers up to Boston University. But it seems also before he died, Mrs. King, this came out in court, had contacted Boston University and said that they weren't. He wasn't going to send any more material or something of that nature, and that was it. And Mrs. King was fighting that in court because Boston University wanted the rest of Dr. King's works. But having not receiving all that, they received, speaking of Boston University, and who was the president at the time, John Silber, Boston University, an aspiring politician nationally and locally. They had received, and this came out in court now, Boston University on what material that they had so far, not all of his works. They had received $35 million. $35 million, brother. And the university has received $35 million now. This is what I'm saying. I'm not saying the King family. And this, of course, Mrs. King, it seems the agreements between her husband and the university, and there was issues. And so Mrs. King got wind of all this, and, she wanted some respectful considerations of her husband's work. And he lost his life, and she had a right to. Her family had a right to. Okay? Whatever they choose to do with the money, it should be done for all of us, but the family had a right to some decent understanding financially to his estate. And that the way it was happening in court didn't seem to go that way. I stayed all but of the decision, all the days there at the court here in Boston, except the last day or so. And I had a conversation with Mrs. King in the judge's chamber. She had to leave before the decision was made. And I asked Mrs. King, would she please stay? She had to go give a speech elsewhere. She said she had to go, but I expressed myself to Mrs. King that by you leaving, they're lynching your husband, killing your husband again here. Please stay. And as I understand it, when she left, and she was escorted to the airport by the state police and Dr. A.L.L Counter of the Harvard Foundation, Harvard University, who was with her, she lost her case in court. Okay, she lost her case, as I understand it now. Don't quote me on this, but I was not there when the jury rendered their decision. So, and I have not checked since, but I had heard from reporters that were there that she had lost her case. The case was in Boston University's favor. So that gives you some idea of how things, even now when you saw things happening with the monument and some speeches of King's recently, some of the issues. I know that King's last book, that Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos and Community. It came out a few years after his assassination, but all you get is I Have a Dream book.
Right.
And his Where Do You Go From Here book is, why would you take his book off the shelves since that time and you couldn't get it? But all you see in the bookstores, Where Do We Go From Here? Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos Community is not in the bookstores, but all you have is I Have a Dream, I Have a Dream, I Have a Dream. You have this kind of thing. And only in the past year or so, when his daughter raised some issues at the Washington gathering again a few years ago, that the Beacon Press and Wherewithal have re-released the book, but it wasn't there. Beacon Press was here in Boston. I had asked them several years ago, where can you get the book? And the editor said, what book? I gave them the ISBN number. They said, oh, you must be mistaken. There's no such book. And these are the people that published it.
Wow. What is in that book that they want nobody to know about?
Well, you think you can get the book, brother. You can get it now. It's out.
Okay.
It's been re-released. But if you read the book and it's the original book, you think you're reading Malcolm. The difference between that book and I Have a Dream book is totally, you wouldn't think it was the same book or the same person. See? And so the issue is similar to the Malcolm estate. I mean, Malcolm's, the movie Malcolm X, the Denzel Washington.
Right.
Yeah. Betty Shabazz, through the estate lawyer, did not, the lifetime rights, and this is in, check with Ebony. Ebony Magazine. It was in Ebony Magazine, 1972, I believe, or 1975, that Betty Shabazz, with her attorney, Percy Sutton, had made the arrangements to sell the lifetime rights of for a movie, and for the funds was trivial amount. I think it was $50,000 to $75,000 on a movie that has grossed worldwide $1.5 billion. And Malcolm's estate does not receive one penny of that. Not one penny. Okay, of the movie. I'm speaking of the movie. The book, yes, but the movie, no. The movie, no. So you have a situation that is similar. I mean, there was a leading tech company, I won't say the name, but one of the world's leading technological companies a few years ago who had put out a phone operating system when they got into the cell phone business, and it was called the OS X, and they used the silhouette of Malcolm image, and that had to be addressed. And that lasted, it was on billboards around the country, and I think that lasted, this was some years ago, for about a year. But that had to be dealt with because the estate has a licensing firm to handle that. But you will have constantly, we've had it happen with material of my mother's. Emory University a few years ago had stolen property that belonged to my mother. It was put at Emory University by two European Americans who had stolen property, and a false document supposedly signed by my mother. The FBI actually contacted me. They knew my mother's signature, and they actually told me they knew this was not your mother's signature, and they wanted to know if I knew who these people were or who others were involved. And I had told the FBI one of the people I knew who was involved. But at that time, the statute of limitations had passed, and so it was up to me to the executor of my mother's estate to prosecute. But I did what I could as the executor and of the estate to have people at Emory to cease and desist of taking this material or receiving primarily any funds that were coming from Coca-Cola, which was over $2 million, that these people were trying to fraudulently get from Coca-Cola. Emory University and matter of fact, the director of African American Studies at Emory University in Atlanta, I can't remember his name right now, but he and Emory wanted me to come down and do a media event on stolen material. This is how brazen people are.
Wow.
And I had told them as such, and I had let them know that the FBI was well aware of the problem and to cease and desist. And it took several years for them to, they wouldn't turn the material back to me. They returned it back to the thieves, supposedly. But as far as we know right now, Coca-Cola did not issue any funds, because funds were to come from Coca-Cola to Emory over to these individuals who fraudulently was trying to pass the materials archived materials off as they being the ones that own this material. So it's consistent. It's consistent. You have people around the country and around the world trying to capitalize on personal properties of others. And I had been filled in by the FBI, and to this date, it's still the largest fraud and embezzlement in the country is art material, archive material, coins, art, jewelry, all sorts of antiques or whatever. It's the biggest fraud in America, even today, of private properties. So why should not say today? That was 4 or 5 years ago. So, and from my knowledge today, it's still the same problem. So this is, it's no different. It has been no different than my cousins dealing with the estate of their father. And it has been the same with several people. It's even happened to the Kennedys. There are court documents of what people have gone through, but you have people like this Professor Manny Marable and the late Professor Manny Marable and these individuals who've done work by committee who have deliberately tried to disinformation to the public, but they won't print this kind of thing. They only want to print or publish falsehoods and illusions and myths of these individuals. But quite a number of people, European Americans in particular, have suffered from this fraud, and quite frankly, we've been, unfortunately, I should say, been tied in on my end with that. Several years ago, my mother's estate was involved in the largest law firm embezzlement in American history. And the firm and the leader of the firm was actually tied in with Bernie Madoff's organization and people. Wow. And so the federal government had arrested the individual, and he was sentenced to jail for 18 months, but he was out. And even recently now, there's some things that are still happening that the federal government is prosecuting people on their foreign bank accounts and finding this money. It takes quite a bit of time, but individual Americans suffer, whites and blacks, but where blacks have so little in their bank accounts or in their 401ks or in their what few stocks or bonds they might have, you know, it's only in the thousands. But we're talking about European Americans who are in the hundreds of millions. And my mother's estate was no different. Her lawyer was the late governor of Massachusetts, Governor Endicott Peabody, who became my lawyer and for the estate, and who was on the White House staff in the Johnson administration. He was chief of FEMA in the 60s, and he was an old friend of my mom's and a friend and an attorney from the 60s. And so his family had been, a lot of things had been stolen from his family and funds. There were several. I won't go into names, but I will mention, I'm just speaking of him because he was a state attorney. Right. But it happens a lot. And black people should be, you know, very careful of who they hire as attorneys. And Betty Shabazz, the late widow of Malcolm X, and the people that she had hired were no different.
Well, you know, I heard Percy Sutton was a CIA agent or something like that. People put that out there. Dick Gregory put that out there, that Percy was an agent. You think that's true?
If Percy Sutton was not an agent, he was, how would I say, Uncle Malcolm used to say, you know, you can be something, you can be so loyal to the master that you do better for the master's house than the master. You care more about the master's house than the master for himself.
Right.
And Percy Sutton, I remember when he gave a media broadcast that Malcolm, he gathered all the funds from Malcolm to be buried. Well, that's out and out lie. It was my mother who paid for every single thing that happened to Malcolm before his death and after. And one of the truths that did come out, one of the few truths that came out, and there were few in Manny Marable's book, but not the correct details, that my mother was buying this property in New York, in Queens, for Uncle Malcolm. But she paid for all his trips abroad, for his hotel, his fees, everything. He would have not been able to go internationally if it wasn't for my mother. And he would not have been able to survive after the house bombing if not for my mother taking care of his family. So funds were not an issue. Funds were never an issue at the time of my uncle's death or before his death. His own personal funds he did not have. He had taken a vow of poverty. He did not have his own personal funds other than his advances that he had received on his book and the Look magazine article, which, of course, he had obligations to his family and to the OAU and Muslim Mosque Incorporated.
Well, actually, is like, do you feel like that was irresponsible for him to take a vow of poverty, having like 4 kids and 2 on the way? Was that irresponsible?
No. When in history do you have such people? Look at the prophets. They all had a vow of poverty, my brother. You can't, there's sacrifices to be made. If we're going to talk about money, worst of all is his life. He knew that he was going to lose his life, and he sacrificed his life. He knew that he could have ran away with him and his family. He could have, all right, but he chose not to because he had told us what would he look like. They killed the president, all right? They're going to kill me, and what would he look like running? How would he look to his children, the legacy? And he's Malcolm X with all this talk. How would he look? The same with Dr. King. Dr. King knew he was going to be killed because in James Farmer, Uncle Malcolm had warned James Farmer. He had warned Dr. King because Malcolm had a list. He had somebody in Washington who was giving him information because there's other information that he had given us on how the intelligence service operate, on the tools and equipment they use, poisonings and listening systems. So we knew about all this. And he had whoever it was, and then, black or white, but there were plenty of young black men from World War II. Well, they weren't young then, World War II and the Korean War. Some of them I knew. One of them was a family member. And he had a secret clearance. But he was a family member. And so he would let Uncle Malcolm know certain things to be careful of. And the CIA and the FBI and other intelligence services know this. It's just how Uncle Malcolm had to be very, very careful because white people at the time, as I said before, the independent nations of the world fighting freedom fighters, and Malcolm's connection with Castro, Che Guevara, Patrice Lumumba, not talk connections, okay, not just talk, but communications and commitments, all right? And the CIA and the European intelligence and others knew this. It's just how do we stop Malcolm? He was not going to stop. As far as his vow of poverty, where is he going to get the money from, brother? The kind of money my mother was giving him. Where are you going to get $6,000 or $12,000 to buy a house when he has, this man and his brothers have built the nation of Islam, not Elijah Muhammad's family. They did not, now you look, they had barely 2 facilities and a storefront. So it was my Uncle Wilfred, Filbert, and Wesley and Reginald that kept them alive until Malcolm came out and took the thing nationally. They all worked together they were intelligent men, Uncle Wilford and Filbert had been to Wilberforce College. They were educated enough to understand administration and payroll, accounting. And so in 1972, I think, or 1975, the Nation of Islam, according to the IRS, was, don't quote me on this exactly, but I think they said it was worth between $50 million and $175 million. Well, I know from myself personally, because we put someone in there in the headquarters in Chicago, Brother Aubrey Barnett, from Boston, who were personal friends of ours, and after my mother getting Uncle Malcolm to understand what was going on, he put Aubrey Barnett in the Chicago office to try to get the book straight, but then found so much corruption there. And this was in Look magazine. If you look the Saturday evening, Look, it was either Look magazine or Post, Saturday Evening Post magazine. Aubrey Barnett is on the cover of exposing some of what was going on in the nation. And that was deliberate. That was the coming out. Malcolm and my mom and Aubrey had planned that. And so that's how the nation began to fall apart. It actually was falling apart in 1958, but Uncle Malcolm didn't see that. He didn't want to see it because he was too busy building the nation, and it was too much. Not only Uncle Malcolm, but my Uncle Wilford, my Uncle Filbert, Uncle Wesley and Uncle Reginald had just got away from it way before. And my Aunt Hilda, who's still alive. She's the only sibling still alive. She's 96 years old.
Wow.
And very, very clear in her mind about so many things. But the nation was worth, from my recollection, from what I knew, $50 million, but I think the IRS said something between 50 to 70, 175 million. So you put that in today's dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And you take a look at the nation now under Farrakhan. These people, or any of these poverty pimps around the country, they have never worked a 9 to 5. All right. My uncles Wilford and Filbert always had the job. Always had a job. They were ministers in the nation, but they always had a job. Doing something, working for someone else or themselves. Malcolm worked for the nation. And the only way he could keep the nation going was to take a vow of poverty, because there were times in some of these temples when there was fraud or mismanagement of funds, and the rent had to be paid, or the lights had to be put back on, or there was no oil in the tank to heat the building. Uncle Malcolm would go in his pocket and, "Here, brother, go down and pay the light bill." So he was always broke. He was always broke. Every day he basically, if he had enough to buy a cup of coffee, it was for himself. That's the way he was raised. The family was like, his father was like that. His mother was like that. And my mother was like that. The money didn't mean anything unless you could help out people and build a nation. And it required that. That's what it takes. It takes a sacrifice, blood, sweat, and tears, not this other stuff that these people are profiling and telling you, oh, yes, you can have nice cars, too. Well, who's buying you those nice cars and those homes and those clothes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The grassroots, the believers. All right? I mean, Jesus showed you that, how he sacked the temples. You're living off the blood of our people. It's not right.
Well, actually, was he aware? I know he was hands-on, Brother Malcolm was. Was he aware of some of the stuff that was going on around the temple in Philadelphia with the Black Mafia? Was he aware of that stuff?
He was told way back, and he was investigating. As I said earlier, Malcolm was the Supreme Court Justice. Mm-hmm. You have the fruit of Islam. These people, he was hard. You hear the public discussion about the white man's the devil and the white man. That's the issue of racism. But to build a nation and to build strong people, you have to have a strong body. You have to have a strong body and sound mind, sound heart. So, he he started the University of Islam. We started classes. And anytime there, in different temples. And so anytime there was a problem, the problem would be reported to directly to Malcolm. He would ask that, or it would go to Chicago, and Chicago would say, this is what's happening. You need to go take care of it. Well, Malcolm was going to go take care of it anyway. But he'd rather have everything go through Chicago, because when you're a field marshal, you can't have your wife taking messages at home 24/7, but that's what was happening from all over the country, calling Brother Malcolm, and he's always gone. He had to get up and go take care of things personally. So I have gone here in Boston and New England when things were falling apart, and some brothers or captain or lieutenant would go out and want to beat up some brother because they were fraudulently taking the brother's money from selling papers or from work. I had to go and with some other brothers to be there, particularly in front of Captain Clarence here in Boston, after Brother Rodney, who was captain, who was his mother was a personal friend of my mother's. Everything that happened in Boston or New England passed through my mother, those that her, to get anything done. And so we would have to address the problems of Captain Clarence, who was supposed to be off. He had a heroin habit. He was still on heroin. He never really got off of it. But Captain Rodney was put down because he was too clean, too just, and too wholesome. There were scams going on. And you have that in any corporation or any organization. You see that today when you're running a national organization with thousands of people, brother, and you have your field marshal, which is Malcolm, and Chicago is just figureheads, there and profiling, supposed to be running headquarters and administrative office. But the person that's in the field was Malcolm. Now, regionally in some other states, like Michigan and Indiana, Uncle Wilfred and Uncle Filbert. And so when you look, all the temples that they would direct minister over, and you won't get this, these in these books, these people know this, what Malcolm's brothers were doing positively in running the mosque that they were over directly, the ministers of, or the regional general manager, and that was Wilfred and Filbert for Michigan, Indiana, and Wisconsin. So Malcolm, his brothers would cover that part for them, and then part of Illinois. But Malcolm had to cover nationally. So when he would hear these kind of things about these brothers doing this stuff, we have trials. You'd have trials. You'd have to go, and you had an investigative body. Of course, Captain Sharif would come in sometime and with his little entourage and put on a show, but that was very rare. It was Malcolm that had to go and clean up the mess with his own people from New York to come down and find out. You send an investigator. Just like you have internal affairs, we had internal affairs. And Malcolm was head of internal affairs. Captain Sharif was head of all captains, but that was only a name only. And occasionally he had problems from Captain Sharif because Captain Sharif's wife was Elijah Muhammad's sister. And it was, Elijah Muhammad's daughter. Captain Sharif's wife was Elijah Muhammad's daughter. And the daughter was really the one who, her and John Ali, who was an FBI informant, who ran Chicago. Mr. Muhammad hadn't ran the Nation of Islam since 1955, 56, and 57, when he had a serious asthma attack. And he was on heavy medication for years and years and years. He was out of it after 57, really. And so Captain Sharif's wife and John Ali ran the headquarters, and Sister Clara, Elijah Muhammad's wife, kept everything quiet. Sister Clara never said anything or did anything when she found out about these women living in her house who were pregnant right there. Sister Clara was really the one that kept that family together, except for Akbar Muhammad, who left and went to Egypt. He was the oldest son, or second oldest, next to Wallace Dean. And so there was a lot of things why you have the two separate organizations now, because these Negroes are going to get, even when it comes to Elijah Muhammad's brother, their family. I even had calls from Elijah Muhammad's brother's daughter that were trying to get us as family back involved with them, and they want to fight over money and all this old business. These Negroes, this is after Malcolm's death now, still, and Louis Farrakhan knew this. He knew all this, and so he was able to step in, and being so close to Malcolm. So in many ways, Farrakhan stopped a lot of these Negroes killing themselves, because that's what these people wanted to do, even outside, within the family and without. So we had thugs. We had thugs. I mean, you have those. You have those bad apples. Powerful country in the world, America, and its military. Look how many bad apples it's got.
Yeah.
Even with its generals, just can't seem to keep their hands off of these other female officers. I mean, it's insane. And when I hear this sort of thing and see the American Army is having problems with its generals and chiefs of staff. So, and I think of the nation and what Uncle Malcolm went through, things that I knew personally, and then what my mother knew of, and how they're always calling her when those that knew her personally felt free that they could get to Brother Malcolm through her, and so she would deliberately sometime wouldn't pass it along unless there was family or personal friends she knew, because the man had enough. He had a wife and children to deal with, and the wife, and understandably, married her at 22. A beautiful sister. You can't have a young woman around, black woman, and being loyal to her husband, and then you're off. It doesn't. And that is the only fault of Uncle Malcolm. He could have brought her to Boston or insisted, but I bet he didn't want to come up here and live with my mom and two aunts who were very strict. And then Aunt Hilda. Just too strict a family for her to live under that. And she didn't want to. She wanted to raise the children the way she wanted to raise. And family made that decision to my mother and Uncle Wilford and Uncle Filbert, leave her alone, let her raise her family like she wants, not in the old strict way the littles used to do. But my Aunt Hilda did help Aunt Betty after Uncle Malcolm's death, help Aunt Betty for the first couple of years, see her through those first few years of raising the children after Uncle Malcolm's death, because my Aunt Hilda lived through that with her mother. People seem to forget Malcolm was not the youngest child. He was the third youngest child. The youngest child was his youngest sister, Aunt Bonnie, and then Uncle Wesley. Okay, and then Uncle Malcolm was the third youngest. And so Malcolm's mother had to, the sister from after her husband being assassinated, she had to raise those children herself, along with having what little help she could have from my mother and her husband's other family members, two brothers, Uncle Oscar and Uncle Jim, who we call him Uncle Bud. And he was a railroad man, but what little money, the family could get together and send out there. The family did what they could do. My mom wanted to bring them all to Boston, not just Malcolm. Initially, she wanted to do that. but she was a young woman herself, and it required a lot of getting state clearance and all this business and funds. And, you know, several family members were willing to do it, but unfortunately, the mother, you know, she came under stress because of these whites were afraid of her out there. And they just took the children. They had to mind their business and left the woman alone because she was still receiving threats from the black community as well, ostracizing her. The black community, if they hadn't ostracized her so bad and had supported her, she probably would have never had a breakdown. But the black community, more than anything, the Negro community, I should say, because they, and, you know, and I know how bad it was because my father grew up with the Little Brothers, and my father's father was a Mason. And the Negroes at that time and the Masons out there, the big Mason Lodge, they were not supportive of Malcolm's father and mother. They were house Negroes. Sad to say, but my grandfather and some of these Masons who were running the lodge there wanted to please the white folks. Don't rock any boats. But if they had got behind this widow and supported her, we might not have a Malcolm X today.
Right.
But, you know, because of my mom bringing Malcolm to Boston and being in Boston with his father's family members, which was very large here with the Cerseys, the Grays, and the Littles at the time. But like he says in his autobiography, you know, being a hick, coming to a big city, Boston, in a bigger city, and being a little light brown skin, handsome, tall brother, and all these beautiful sisters after you, and then the white women too. It was a lot for him to handle. The family had a problem with him. You know, he snuck out. He didn't walk out. The family let him go out and go to these. He snuck out all the time. So until he decided he just going to stay out, and that was in New York. You know, he didn't come back home. He ran away from home. But my parents, never sent the police after him. My mother didn't believe in that, nor my father. So a lot of the stuff that you hear are people who just really want to give another perception of Malcolm and his family and ignore the fact. But if you don't do your own research and to vet this information that people have, then you take it on face value. And unfortunately, we have that too often.
Well, actually, this guy, you brought up Mason. Was Malcolm a Mason himself?
No, he was never a Mason. There were other family members who were Masons. His uncles, his father's brothers were Masons.
Okay.
They were in the lodge. Uncle Bud was a Mason, and his father's sisters, my aunt, who lived here in Boston with my parents on the first floor here at the historic landmark here in Boston, Sarah Little and Gracie Little, two what the old expression, old maids who never married. They were to raise their father's daughters, my mother, and or to be their guide, or their guardian, so to speak. They were old enough, but that's what they did. My mother and Aunt Mary, Malcolm's second eldest sister, they were Eastern Stars. I don't know if you're familiar with the Eastern Stars.
I heard of them. I'm not, I heard of the Eastern Stars before.
Yeah, well, they were of that type of organization. But there were several family members that were Masons and in the Morris Church, and then going back to the 1830s, there were several Littles and Grays. They were free blacks. There were the Littles, some of them were born in slavery, and then there were the others, Grays and Cerseys, that were free blacks. They were never held in slavery in the South. I am doing research on that, and I have done, that I will be writing that history. Malcolm stands on the shoulders of people who, he just didn't pop up and be Malcolm X. He stands on the shoulders of others who were freedom fighters, and that history is there. There are some people now making an attempt to arrest that history and put a white face on it from from Malcolm's mother's side. There was this white guy, this white Norton, that they're trying to put out now through some so-called Finding Your Roots, if you know what I'm speaking of, and put an image out of a white man, if you know what I'm speaking of. But this white guy back in Grenada was an Englishman. He was a slaveholder, captain of ships, slave ships, that merchant type of thing back in Grenada, bringing black people from Asia and Africa. So there is an attempt to do DNA research. And he probably is. There's a photograph being circulated.
Okay.
But it's nothing new that there are white people in our family. That's nothing new. There's also Native American. There's also, 100% African. But these whites that are in here, these were the rapists. These were the murderers. And there's documentation on who they are to show their history. So there's a person trying to white eyes Malcolm's ancestry. But we're making a conscience. If you want to do that, go right ahead. And then we expose who these people are. The documentation and research is there. But you have individuals who want to, give another history. And that's what Malcolm speaks on that. Malcolm speaks on that, how these people want to take something. Malcolm says, paraphrase, I'm just said I'm going east. And the media would come out and said, Malcolm said he's going west. That sort of thing. The disinformation is what I'm speaking of.
Right. I was going to ask, I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off.
Oh, that's ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I was thinking about, you mentioned like the former estate, the former lawyer for your estate and your mom's estate worked in the Johnson administration. And I was just thinking about, I just saw the movie Selma. They also showed a scene where Malcolm met with Coretta in Selma. So a lot of folks not aware that Malcolm was, he went down to Selma to try to meet Dr. King and did their speech in front of SNCC. But I think that, just looking at that scene, it reminds me that we need a new movie, some new movies, about Brother Malcolm X. I know a lot of people criticize the movie, for how it portrayed Lyndon B. Johnson. So I just want to get your insight on that. Have you seen the movie Selma?
No, I haven't seen the movie Selma. I will go see it if I see it. I'm not paying for it. I'll go see it for free. I'm definitely not paying because I don't know if the family is benefiting from it. If they were benefiting properly from it, I wouldn't mind paying to go see the movie. Not at all. We do live in a capitalist society, but I'm not aware of the King family being paid properly because I've experienced what happened here in Boston at the trial in court with the King papers. So I'm not willing to do what the Marvin Worth estate and Warner Brothers have done to the Shabazz estate and haven't given any type of consideration on a $1.5 billion movie of Malcolm X, which is an issue, serious issue for me, because I know how these European Americans, we live in a very capitalist society that doesn't care about not even its own people. These European Americans only care, their real color is the green, and they don't care who they step on, their own people. Their own people. So if they do with their own people in history here and in Europe, what they think about us. And so I have been writing and doing, as I said, doing research because my intention is to do a movie on Malcolm, but not on Malcolm, on Malcolm's family, and Malcolm's part of it, because it's not such as Professor Tuck, what he has done with his book. It's not my intention to go into Malcolm's personal life and his wife and children and family and done what all these other fools have done. My concern is the issue of black people and what the family represent and what they stood for and what Malcolm was talking about. So putting it in perspective to the racist problem in America and the world, and how his family has been involved in that since the time they've been made captive in one way or another. I mean, Malcolm stands on his mother and father's shoulders, stand on his uncle's shoulders, they stand on his great-grandparents' shoulders, men and women. And a lot of Native Americans are very much a part of that in our family. So it is my intention to put that in some sort of documentary form, not some dramatic movie. I had seen the movie of Mandela, which was done recently, Idris Elba, which is very good, but it's drama. It's drama. It's a movie made to be. It's very well done. The actor was very good, but there are things that I know that young people don't know. South Africa didn't get its independence because of sitting down at the table. They were forced to sit at that table. There was an armed struggle with Castro and the freedom fighters. That was one of the things that, if you see this last movie, that the actor Idris Elba, the English actor, they show him coming down the steps before he steps to the podium, so to speak, to accept the inauguration for President of South Africa. They cut away from that picture. They don't want to show you Castro, who stands next to President Nelson Mandela. I think Vice President Al Gore was the only one to attend the inauguration of Nelson Mandela. The United States didn't want to. The president didn't want to come at the time. He didn't want to, because they were infuriated that President Nelson Mandela would have the freedom fighters, and particularly Castro and others who supported armed struggle, including the Chinese, standing up there on the podium with President Nelson Mandela. They were infuriated. But 50 miles from Joburg, the freedom fighters were insisting you sit down at the table. They had bombed dams. They had sent back thousands of body bags to Joburg and Pretoria. You sit down and negotiate, or we're coming and taking over. And so they were forced, but you get this melodrama, this whole melodrama, and these blacks go along with it. I was, when I was in Oxford, England, recently, and I did an interview at the Rhodes House, and the people there were gracious enough to let us see some of the areas of the Cecil Rhodes House. And one of the things in the general room, conference room, was a portrait of President Nelson Mandela. But what was sad for me was not just the portrait, but a plaque with next to the President Nelson Mandela that said the Mandela Rhodes Foundation. Mandela Rhodes Foundation. And I asked the general or the warden or whatever that was there, why is that here at the Rhodes House? And I would tell you privately what he told me. I won't discuss it on the radio. But it was sick. And I wish not to have your listeners, but it wasn't because of Nelson Mandela himself that why his name was there with Cecil Rhodes, or his portrait in the Rhodes House. Now, I don't know, I know most of our young people in America today have no idea, if you find one in a million that know who Cecil Rhodes was, especially young African Americans. A lot of whites do, but our young people don't have a clue who Cecil Rhodes was. But for Nelson Mandela's name to be next to Rhodes is paramount to Malcolm being associated with Adolf Hitler.
Right.
Next to this racist dog, Hitler. Malcolm X and Adolf Hitler, best of friends.
Lord. I don't know if the top buddy film, I guess.
The Malcolm X and Adolf Hitler Foundation. That would be, wouldn't it? But that's what it's analogous to. Nelson Mandela is dead. This happened after his death, long after. So why is it there? Why is that foundation in existence and Nelson Mandela's name is attached to it and his portrait hangs in the General Hall of the Cecil Rhodes at Oxford University?
There's an African collection also in the Rhodes house too as well. The African collection, their books on Africa, their artifacts on Africa, is it housed in the Rhodes house? It was, but it's been removed. It's been removed under the claiming that wasn't enough space. They needed more space. But there's too many black students that were going there researching. So we still have this. You know, you have this. And this is all these institutions. So as long as they can control you, your mind thought, your processes to think the way they want you to think. And you can't fault them for that, my brother. You can't. And Malcolm thought, this is our fault. This is our fault. If you want to be taught and learn under these people, well, you're going to get, a Negro, a house Negro. This is our fault. We're sending our children to these institutions of racism. I mean, look at these Negroes. You see them out here. They're marching and doing all this talk and then turn right around tomorrow morning. Look at that Ferguson thing. Look how long that lasted. And then they had these Negroes going to shop at these supermarkets come near Christmas time. The same stores that they be bashing and smashing in the neighborhood, but they show up at Christmas time to spend that money. This is, the people, the powers that be know this. They know this. I mean, look what we're doing. You have our people out here, 30-year mortgages. When I grew up, my brother, no black person had a 30-year mortgage. First of all, they couldn't afford it, a mortgage period, but those that did have a mortgage, they either bought the house cash or the mortgage paid off in 5 or 10 years. Nobody walked around. Nobody, brother, 30, 40, 50 years ago would buy a house, an old house for $300,000 or $400,000, or a new house for $300,000 or $400,000, and a 30-year mortgage, and in 30 years you have paid $700,000 or $800,000 on a $300,000 house, and in 20 years of that 30, you have 2 children that have to go to college, with the average college tuition costing you today $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. And then you have a car note. It's absurd. People are totally out of their mind. This is the mindset. This is where, this individualism. This is a nation, black or white, that is individualist. This is not who we are as a people. This is not who we are or who we were in this nation even. But this is where we're going. So many of us. So as my mother would say, you have to separate the wheat from the chaff. You're not going to, the wheat from the chaff, if you understand that, have any kind of farming background. The chaff is the part that you don't use for the bread. That you use to fill or to fill in. The wheat, the meat of it all is what you use to break your bread. Or, like Malcolm said himself, the house Negro and the field Negro. We have to understand you're not going to deal in an intelligent way with this house Negro. We're going around here looking at these people, these house Negroes. They're nothing but what some Chinese folks have a term that they use about some of their own people. You're yellow on the outside like an egg. In reverse, yellow on the outside but white on the inside. And that's what you have. You're black or brown on the outside, but you're white-minded. You're philosophical, ideological ideas. You should read a statement, some material that the British Parliament on how they would indoctrinate the Indians and the Asians and the Africans to their way of thinking. Their parliamentary decisions and how they would create
the Negro or the Indian, the Anglo-Indian, the English-thinking Indian, the Indian with English. He would no longer be Indian or Asian. He'd be English. They've documented this. This is what the purpose of Oxford was about. This is the purpose of these other institutions here in America. You're not to think for yourself, as Malcolm said, to critically analyze. These people don't want to analyze anything. You know, it's just like brothers who want to go and hang out and looking for a woman, or a woman looking for a man, who they seem to be better at it than we do. Brothers don't analyze when they're looking for a woman. They just, first things they see is what's on the outside. Mm-hmm. You and I ain't no different if you're young and dumb. And we have a lot of young people, male or female, that you see the images. You see the images. In the nation, we didn't allow our children to be watching this stuff on TV. Cut it off. You don't watch this stuff. You don't need to. Not the young minds of these young people. Right? And if you raise them right, you won't have to worry about where their minds are when they get to be 18, 19, and 20. But if you have them indulging in this foolishness at a young age and entertaining that, what do you expect? Okay, these white people that run this world today, they don't have their children I'm talking about the rulers of this world, involved in studying this stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, they are having them into the white way of literature, finishing school, the best schools. And when you come home, you do your schoolwork. Okay? Don't believe what you see when you see these white people even on TV going in the mall shopping. Those are not the leaders and rulers of the nation or of the world. Mm-hmm. Their children are studying. I mean, you hear about it. Look at Mark Zuckerberg or Microsoft, Bill Gates, and the others. What? They quit Harvard. I know a few white boys that done quit Harvard. I have one that's a personal friend that became the richest person before he was 30. He became the Bill Gates of his nation. And he went to go to Harvard for his master's. And he interviewed at the business school with some of these professors and came back angry at me that I insisted that he go. But his answer to me was, what a bunch of dumb idiots. I know more than they do. And now he can endow Harvard if he wants to, at whatever price. But the point was, their mindset was not about, it was indoctrinating people to just be administrators and not leaders and rulers. Harvard has programs in several of these institutions to have overseer mentality. Like you had the overseer, we had the white overseers on us. That's what you have. You have the master, you have the overseers, you have the house Negro. It still exists, brother. It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. The formula is the same. The execution is a little different. That's it. And that's what Malcolm talk about. You have to critically analyze, and as long as we're not able to critically analyze our situation, we'll still be beggars.
Yeah, that's so true. I want to ask you this. I know you mentioned Cuba a couple of times in reference to what we talk about tonight. I want to ask you, was it true? I talked to Brother Howard Wright. He said that Malcolm was going to meet with Che Guevara before he got assassinated. Is that true?
That's not only 100% true, brother, but I can say now at my age I was going to be one of the freedom fighters. Uncle Malcolm was supported by Chairman Mao for money and the Chinese for money and weapons. The CIA knew this, and meeting Che Guevara for the freedom fighters, organizing to get brothers from here to send them back to Africa to go and train in the freedom fighter camps. So if Castro hadn't done what he had done, there would be myself and some others. And there were some brothers that went. but Malcolm was contemplating, because of his relationship with Che Guevara and Patrice Lumumba and Kwame Nkrumah, registering with the State Department as an agent. There's a procedure that you have to go through to register as an agent. I forgot the exact term, but anytime, as such as you have the problem today of people who are recruiting, the U.S. government stopped when it happened some years earlier with blacks and whites were doing it. It's nothing new. You see all this stuff on TV today. White people were going to enlist in the French army, the German army, the Spanish army, the Russian army from America in World War I and World War II to fight fascism. It was okay for the whites to go. But when African Americans, check your history, when African Americans wanted to go to fight the fascist Italians from coming into Ethiopia, there were several black people who left and went and fought in Africa with the Africans fighting the fascist Italians, trying to attack Ethiopia and coming in. And that's why Emperor Haile Selassie went to the UN and asked for more help from the Americans. But African Americans went themselves. But just before, shortly after that, when the U.S. government heard about this, black people going abroad, that they passed a law, some kind of law, I don't know exactly the term, that were particularly us as a people couldn't go. I mean, the way they worded it made it difficult for blacks to go. And if you wanted to do this type of thing for blacks again, or to recruit, you had to register with the State Department first and get permission to do what you wanted to do. So Malcolm was going to lay it on the table. He didn't keep any secrets. There was no secrets that Uncle Malcolm, this stuff that you read, kept from the CIA or the FBI, and claiming the FBI didn't know. They have their wiretaps. They follow Malcolm around, including these people that work for IMS, Carl Rowan's organization, which now the USAID are as the IMS. The so-called blacks that were in Africa when Malcolm was there that worked for the State Department, who were there or supposed to be on friendly missions. They were nothing but informants. Some of these famous women in America today, these Negro women, they were just informants like we have in our community because Malcolm told us about it. You can see in movies now when they show the Chinese and Malcolm. I think Van Peebles, he played in a movie where he played Malcolm.
Ali, yeah.
Yeah, he played Malcolm, and then there was somebody else playing Ali, and they show a scene with Malcolm with the Chinese. That's true. And the Chinese were giving Uncle Malcolm information because they had their intelligence service. The Russians had their intelligence service. The freedom fighters had their intelligence service. Those African nations at that time that were true freedom fighters, the leaders, not these puppets and Uncle Tom's fat boys they got now. If you notice, you look at all those leaders at the time, they were all slim and fit. They were fighters. Now you have these fat house Negroes pretending to be leaders of these nations. They're not. There's very few. Nelson Mandela was a freedom fighter. Stephen Biko, Mbeki, Nyerere of Tanzania, Che Guevara, Rawlins of Ghana, all of the freedom fighters that fought, the ones in India, in Asia, the rest of Asia, these weren't fat guys sitting on the hog, all right, getting fat off the people. But that's one measure. When you see a fat guy walking around, he calls himself a leader. Even in this nation, you don't see any fat guys anymore. They're slim and fit.
Yeah, even Al Sharpton, right? Even Al Sharpton slimmed down.
Yeah, he was told to do something with that head of his and all that foolishness, looking like a fool, and talking stuff. So he had sense enough to even to do that. But he it's a little bit too late. It's too little late. Not talk young people aren't, brother. Anytime you have an old fool, whether you or I, out here leading these young people astray and talking foolishness, or hoping and a praying, and just that's over. That's over. That's over. That's over, and where people know who these people are. Those that are sincere. We have those that want to shuck and jive and con and slick, and we have a lot of pimps. We have a lot of pimps, the male and female. We're living in a world today where this dollar-minded world, individualist world, no longer have to have a gun at our head. All he has to do is put $1 in front of you and put somebody like these entertainers have their wives shake their booty on the stage and do a pole dance with a chair on the stage, and everybody's whooping and hollering. You know who I'm speaking of?
I already know, yeah.
Okay, and he's on the stage with his wife, pimping her. And that's the daughter, that's the father of babies, of the woman he's having the baby with. I mean, you have these pimps and he's doing it, but that's a success story. That's a success story. And that's, it's sad. I'm happy to see those that came out in defense of Bill Cosby, though. Some black women. I'm happy. I'm happy some black women stepped up for whatever reason. Because I don't see anyone, the way they were making Bill Cosby look, these women, I mean, he would have to be the king pimp of all time.
I was thinking, I don't see it happening like that. What do you think about Temple and Spelman, though, their reactions, too? I mean, he has not been found guilty in a court of law, but they basically, try to get rid of him, his connections to these schools. I mean, it's like Jill Scott said, why not give back the money you took from him over the years as well, too? The millions of dollars he gave to these institutions.
They ain't going to do that. They ain't going to do that. No, brother, you can't. No, they take the money. That's the individual. They didn't come out in defense of him yet, have they?
I mean, they stripped him away. I mean, they stripped like Temple, and they walking away from him, but they're not giving back his money. But they just basically kind of distance themselves from.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They haven't given back the money, and they haven't come out in defense of him, have they?
No, they have not.
Oh, this house Negro. You can't expect much from this house Negroes, brother. You can't expect much from these house Negroes. You can't. This man, this black man, whether he is innocent or guilty, that's on him. My thing on Mr. Cosby, because I knew Mr. Cosby very well, but only in a professional sense on tour when I used to play professional tennis, and I always have seen that man held himself in public and in private in the best. Sometimes I wondered, how he deal with, because I see what these people do. I see what, just like Dick Gregory has said, and I believe in your network. Believe me, brother, I see what they send. They send these people, and most of them, they don't need nobody to send them.
Right.
Okay. They know how some of these brothers act. They know how some of these we men are. Black over. In fact, if Bill Cosby was to talk, I don't know what really happens or goes on. What he sees, he probably wouldn't live long.
Right.
Okay? Because these white men out here, what they're doing, I mean, they done involve now the Prince of England and A.L.L.
All the guys. Yeah.
Okay, I'm surprised. I don't know who, somebody somewhere, and look, and I'm sure they ain't black. Somebody somewhere done decided that they're just going to come out and go at, I mean, anytime you go at the Prince of England and then Alan Dershowitz, who's the Dean of Law at Harvard Law School, and put him with some 16, listen, my brother, I don't know what world these people are living on. Okay. You got more than one Whitey Bulger walking around. I mean, I don't know if you're from Boston, but they found a bunch of people up here in the Justice Department and the FBI that this man was dealing with. that away, and the bodies they found.
Mm.
And I used to wonder why this park out here in Boston, South Boston, was done over so nice before they did anything else over in the city. This park was done over very nice. So I don't think people, there's something much more behind it, much more behind it, whether it's organized or whether it's individual. It can very much be individual. It can very much be individual because you have human beings who, you know, they just feel slighted in some way or another, and, you know, you're 50, 60 years old and time has passed you.
Right.
And all these other little young things out here. I mean, these brother, it's sad, but we live in a society that's supposed to be democracy. I mean, they've legalized marijuana. This brother's still in jail for marijuana, but now you got states that are billionaires. Right. I mean, this stuff is sick. And then you got a nation of guns and violence. I mean, a nation of violence in creating wars in other countries.
Right.
And attacking people. Then we want to worry about what these nitwits that did what they've done in France or at 9/11, innocent people. Innocent people. And you got the media just playing marketing. No respect for the dead. Police officers not even respecting. Go to, you know, if you have a political statement that you want to your boss or the mayor, de Blasio, you know, you make it at a funeral? You're supposed to be respecting your dead, and you make a political or economic statement because you got a contract negotiation going on at a funeral? If I was the mayor of New York City, he'd have a problem, but I'd fire every one of them. I'd fire every one of them. If it's 25,000, call in the National Guard, fire every one of them.
But it's like, if the president, right, if they did that on, let's say the military turn it back on the president, you know you got feelings about the president, you might have some personal feelings, but you don't represent yourself at that job, right? You're supposed to be a professional, like you said.
Right.
It's not the right place and time to do something like that. The era of grieving.
Dead, your friend or enemy, not. You have to respect. You have to maintain some humanity, brother. You can't take on the cloth of your enemy or of the wicked. You have to maintain some humanity.
Right.
I may not like you. I ain't got time to hate you, because the hate. If black folks really hated, brother, we'd have been as nutty as that other fool who shot them. We'd have been, listen, that one, that you take, listen to me, pick up on this. When you hear all these white men, for some whatever little reason, going around the country shooting, they decide they want to kill up their whole family and a baby and shoot out a mall or whatever, shoot out a school because somebody didn't love me and the girls didn't love me, you know you got a problem. But how many of these of our people you go and just decide, I'm just going to shoot somebody today on GP? Okay, you know, when you get a brother to shoot somebody on GP, you know he really gone, and he did the best thing to shoot himself, because he really is no good to us or them. So he was a fool, and you have him. But if we were all as sick as some of it's amazing. We're blessed that 99.90% of us aren't running around here like that.
Right.
You know, and that's something my uncle talked about, that he talked to his family. Don't go at my death and do something foolish, because we were ready to. Personally, I didn't give a shit. My attitude, blow them all the fuck up. My attitude is nuke them all, black and white. That's how angry I was.
But they did try to get y'all to go each other. Like, they burned Mosque number 7 down, and they also burned Muhammad Ali's apartment.
Yeah, all that old foolishness.
But there was no, you think that was the government doing that, or you think that was black folks doing that?
Brother, you don't have to. Listen, what we know, there was you use people and you manipulate people. You got those in the nation that were that sick and stupid. We had some people, brother, that were just ignorant and stupid. Listen, my mother and I met one of the third in command in the boss in New York City after Uncle Malcolm's death in Central Park one night. My mother had a hand grenade and a gun. We met this guy in uniform. And we had a nice conversation. I just sat there. I was the driver and just listened to him. And he sat in the back seat. And we know he didn't come alone because my mother and I, we were alone in the car, but we weren't alone. There was another individual, but he wasn't there. He was elsewhere. But there is, we knew who the informants were. My mother even named one of them to challenge Socialist Workers' Press, the Challenger, I think it was, back in the 60s. She described the individual, but she didn't name him. That individual exposed himself in the 90s. So that goes to show what my mother knew. And there are things that Malcolm knew. But that was not difficult to find out who informants and who are, because at the time, the FBI, they were good, but they weren't all that swift. They had some good agents, but the best people were your military intelligence. And your military intelligence that functioned within community as well. At that time, CIA was allowed to operate within the confines of the United States. I don't know if black people know that, but it wasn't until not too long ago. I think it maybe, I don't remember exactly when they took the national status of the CIA able to operate within the confines of the United States. But they had that authority at one time. It was at the time of Malcolm. But that was taken away, I think, as an act of Congress. But the best intelligence service at the time was the military. And they were good at it. They were very good at it because they had, the intelligence apparatus that was very capable. These were people that came out of World War II. You had a body of men who come out of the Foreign Intelligence Service that were very well qualified, and they were used very well. So we were aware of that. Malcolm was aware of it. It had been put on us for a long time. So it was nothing new. But when you're dealing with a nation and a people, it's necessary. Intelligence has been necessary since black people came up with the concept of government and justice. We're the first ones that came up. You should study that. Back in the time before pharaohs and kings and chiefs, the justice system and the information system, intelligence. And we're highly intelligent people in Africa and Asia. It's ancient. So for the system of justice and police, even in villages today, you'd be surprised how much some of these systems still in place that come from back at that time. But it's a necessity when you have a society and you're developing a civilization. It has always been necessary. Somebody from the time of hunter-gatherers, somebody has to be the one that is capable of leading, but you appoint the most capable one, and that person is raised and trained, and you're expected to carry your duty. And if you don't, duty is important. So our people figure they can just go helter-skelter. If you look at revolutions in the world or freedom fighters, you will find that your freedom fighters of today and the past, they weren't the ones from the grassroots that was the pimp or the drunkard or the dysfunctional. You don't have no drunkards or dysfunctionals or pimps. They come from some type of intellect of responsibility and capability. And it's a myth when you got some of our people out here today. It's happened in Malcolm's family that think they are capable of being another Malcolm. Okay? And Malcolm was born and raised to think, walk, and talk a certain way from his father and mother and from his grandparents. And as I said, if it wasn't for my mother, there would be no Malcolm X. And if it wasn't for his mother and father, there would be no Malcolm X or his grandparents. It would not have happened. And as I said in my book, If you look at them, when in a time in history do you have black men and women who unite to help build a community or a nation? Wilford, Filbert, Wesley, Reginald, Ella, Hilda. When do you have brothers and sisters that come together to unite for one cause in a family, siblings? It doesn't happen. So how did it happen? Okay, what did it take? How many families today can say, oh, my children, I've raised my children to be doctors, lawyers, or even street sweepers, or teachers, or ministers, to be good and positive in their community. It's a tough challenge, let alone to be revolutionary leaders, to fight for one's liberty and are willing to die for it. How many can you name in history?
Wow.
Every one of them get killed. You kill Patrice, okay? You kill Malcolm. You kill so many. You kill Che Guevara. Try to kill Castro. You try to kill Mao. You try to kill those in India, in China, South America. So many. But the ones that do die become the martyrs. So when I hear people talk about being leaders, when you die or you spill blood, then you can say you're a leader. Other than that, can't talk to me. I don't want nothing you can say. I'm sorry. If you're not dead and you've proven yourself, or if you spilled your blood, all right? And there were those that, in Malcolm, King, Medgar Evers, these are our martyrs. These men, they didn't get caught at a bar or in a hotel room with a woman shooting up. They died on point. You ever heard that expression?
Died on point. I never heard it.
Oh, to be on point?
I heard to be on point, yeah.
On point. Well, they were on point and they died there. If you understand the Mason connotation of that. Okay?
Yes, sir.
That's the thought in the nation, to be on point. Beyond, heard the expression, beyond the four square?
Yeah.
Okay. Our young people, can talk. That's all it is. But until you're willing to shed liberty, living here in Massachusetts, my brother, if you want to see what liberty is, or study white history, what they mean, liberty or death. All right? You fight for your liberty. All right? And it may mean your death. All right? Not many people, not the average person isn't willing to do that. They want to talk a good job, They want to game, want to talk. So that's easy. And sometimes that can be hard. That can be hard. Malcolm could talk, but he could walk the walk, and so couldn't Dr. King, Medgar Evers, Nat Turner, even the women in our lives, Fannie Lou Hamer, Harriet Tubman. They didn't die, but they sure came close enough, brother. They were on point. And they took a lot of risks. And Mrs. Hammer suffered a lot physically. Right. She spilled blood. Harriet Tubman was wounded. She spilled blood, but she kept going back. So until you can prove something, show me something. I don't, because I've seen it and I've lived it. So I'm not, when I saw the bullets in my uncle's chest and we identified his body, myself, my mother, and his widow, Aunt Betty, and Percy Sutton was there, identifying. Nobody else showed up to identify that body, and the only family member that showed up at the funeral was Malcolm's third eldest sister, Aunt Hilda, and a cousin, a beloved cousin who, when the house was bombed, he went over to her house. And she was from my mother's side of the family, the Masons. So when you're willing, they put their family on the line. And then Ozzie Davis's actress Ruby Dee's brother.
Mm-hmm.
He gave his house and his family. He put his family on the line. I mean, he jeopardized his family, my man.
Mm-hmm.
Jeopardized his family. But Brother Thomas, actress Ruby Dee's brother, was willing to do that. And that's why actor Ossie Davis could speak on Malcolm the way he could. Because they were willing to make a sacrifice. All praises due Allah, nothing happened to that family.
Mm-hmm.
And we're forever indebted to them. Forever indebted to them for taking that step. For risk. It may not have been the smartest thing to do, but when you're fighting a revolution by any means necessary for one's liberty, you know, Malcolm once said if you don't stand for something, you stand for anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the brother and his family and his wife and the children didn't fully understand it, but they stuck by their parents.
Mm.
So that's a lot to be said. There's a lot to be said for them.
Yeah, I want to thank you for all this. Yeah, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, I hope I've been able to give you, some of your audience, what you wanted, and I appreciate you calling me back, because I wanted you to have some up-to-date information, not the same old rigmarole that is put out in the media here in America today. I wanted you to have this information on Professor Stephen Tuck and the BBC4 documentary and Professor Tuck's book, The Night Malcolm X Spoke, at Oxford University, that just came out at the end of 2014.
I'm definitely grateful for that, and I'll make sure my networks will know about the BBC4 documentary. They need to listen to it. That's a must listen. And I definitely think that people get a lot out of this interview as well, because I had people contact me this week even asking for more information about Malcolm X, because they saw the interview you did with me online and some other things. And so they were very interested in finding out more about Brother Malcolm and his family. So this is definitely due to, I appreciate that. And I also want to ask you two more things. I want to ask, did you see that Betty and Coretta movie that came out on Lifetime about 2 years ago almost?
I think I caught a bit of it, a little bit of it. I didn't watch the whole thing, no, but I did catch some of it.
I heard it was, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Oh, you heard it was what?
I heard it was like not really that accurate in terms of their relationship, their actual relationship.
I didn't watch the whole thing. I really can't comment on the movie. I can only comment of what I know the two of them, and the relationship with all the widows of these assassins, and that includes Mrs. King, Betty Shabazz, Mrs. Evers. Your listeners should do some history check. A few years back at the Malcolm X, Dr. Betty Shabazz Cultural Center in Harlem, New York, the center, along with the Smithsonian Institute of Washington, D.C., Smithsonian Institute, had a display at the center called the Freedom Sisters. The Freedom Sisters at the Malcolm X, Dr. Betty Shabazz Center in New York City, funded by Ford and I believe Chase Manhattan Bank, about the various Freedom Sisters, and amongst them was Mrs. Evers, Medgar Evers, the late widow of Medgar Evers. Sorry, the widow of the late Medgar Evers, and Dr. Betty Shabazz, widow of Malcolm X, and Mrs. King. Their photographs there and text. It was a tour of and several other African American women, activists in the community, and that exhibit toured around the country. But and their relationships were, I think, when you have our people. When I heard about the movie and I got a bit of it, I'm very suspect and sensitive to when you're dealing with our women, our black women, our mothers of these heroes and wives who raised the best way they knew how, and not much support from the grassroots community, wholehearted support, as you might think, then to find ways to exploit them. And they have to, from their own wherewithal, be the best defense they could for themselves and their family. But they came together as a family, as black women, and they had a special bond, a very special bond, and they would meet in retreats. And there were people who sponsored those retreats in Vermont, which was at the time the Quakers. The Quakers were very supportive in sponsoring a retreat for these people to come to. And I'm familiar most particularly with the situation on Dr. Betty Shabazz in early days and the Quaker support, because it even came to my mother. So in personal representative at the time of Malcolm's death that came from the Quaker organization, a woman, a European-American Quaker woman, came to my mom and Betty Shabazz for whatever support they may need for the children and education. And that was offered for all of them going forward, all three of them going forward, because they did not have the wherewithal. My mother had the wherewithal to do a retreat and financially take care of Betty and the children, but Betty chose to go her own way. And Malcolm's family decided not to interfere with those wishes, what she wanted to do, other than if she wanted our support, wherever she asked for, we were going to give it. And Aunt Hilda gave 3 or 4 years of her life to help Aunt Betty raise the children initially. So I'm very sensitive when someone tries to portray these widows of the assassins. And in my opinion, personally, short of something that they authorized and wrote the script themselves, I don't think no one has any business touching it whatsoever, unless the women were approached and they had 100% control of the product in the media. That is giving too much liberty to these individuals who want to produce this stuff. I think whether the women get it right or wrong, they should have that opportunity, or family members should have that opportunity, not writers who want to take carte blanche on portraying something in a documentary or a film without 100% control by the people directly involved in some kind of way. Also, in addition to that, these children, including some of the Kennedy children, were friendly with the children of these 3 black women. There is a connection, even with Mrs. Kennedy, in the sharing of some of this trauma. Because Mrs. Kennedy, Jacqueline Kennedy, she was there when her husband, right there, assassinated and have children. So they all have a direct personal connection with each other. Maybe someday that story will be told. I don't know how, because Mrs. Kennedy is gone. Mrs. Evers is around. Betty Shabazz is gone. Mrs. King is gone. So I don't know if Mrs. Evers would be willing to do something from her aspect of it. I met Mrs. Evers. She's a very strong woman, very proud woman. She's been a very courageous woman in doing what she could with the NAACP and raising her family. But I take umbrage at anyone who tries to portray anything of Mrs. King or Dr. Betty Shabazz on producing something But you have people who just in it to make money and distort history. They have their own propaganda or miseducation or disinformation. So I as I said, I haven't seen that film. I don't know what it's about, other than it's Betty and Mrs. King. But it's been my experience over these past 40, 50 years of anything that's portrayed on us in this society, and individualism and the dollarism. You're not going to get anything correct on, brother, unless you produce it yourself. Mm-hmm. And put it out there. We don't control the airways. We don't own broadband. We don't own a license on the airways, and then that's even dictated how far you can go, with government.
Right.
But this is our fault. There's the continent of Africa and Asia that black people can produce. I mean, Africa, the next Nollywood is in Nigeria. Mm. 3 producing places in the world right now for film. The tops is India, United States, India, China. I think it's United States, India, and now Nigeria for producing films. And soon China will be producing more international films than all 3 put together. So we have the opportunity. When I was just in London, as I said 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was astonished in the Central District of theater how many black plays, were being put on or coming on that had black people, that were doing theater, black plays. I mean, I saw at least a half a dozen of them. I think in this country, in New York, I don't know. Last I was up in New York City, I don't know where there's a half a dozen plays going on that were put on, produced and put on by black folks. Mm-hmm. I know I travel to Asia a lot. Bollywood puts out more films than anybody. And so you could do that. I mean, there's so many avenues. You do not have to. The world has 6 billion, going on 7 billion people. United States is only 350 million of it, brother. And with Canada, that's barely over 400 million. I think Canada has another, maybe with Canada, might be running up close to 500 million. So in Europe, East and Western Europe, you could add barely another billion. The rest of the continent, the world, is primarily people of non-white. And there are avenues that, that you could use. But if you want to make a lot of money, like some of these people are doing now, and it's all about the money, that kind of money, then that's what you have to do. But you can still make money, but you won't make, maybe 200 million a film. Mm-hmm. But that's what these people, that's what they're into, the dollarism, that kind of money. Who needs $200 million? I know I don't. I $200 million, I'm not going to, I'm going to try to figure out how many of our people with 200 million I can educate. I don't need 200 million. We have my wife's family, family members who have developed one of the number 1 industries in Asia. And that individual has dedicated to raise black children from the age 2 through college, 60 black children, to raise, feed them, and fund them all the way through college for his wealth. And this has never been done from an individual in the history of this nation, in that nation. But that's what he's doing, and a very unassuming person. You would never know he's one of the richest people in the country. But he has dedicated to giving back. He doesn't need all that, doesn't want it. He drives his own car. Maybe even ride a bicycle now and then. He doesn't care for that. He's not living in a palace in a penthouse. Refused to. Doesn't want to. Won't let his children even do so.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have these kind of people. But they show you what some guy in IT has the largest yacht in the world, and he can land 3 or 4 helicopters, and he's got 5 or 6 houses here and there, and 100 cars. There's some guy, I think he has 1,000 cars. It's only 365 days a year. So it take you about 3 or 4 years to get around to the first car you drove on day one. You'd have to drive 3 or 4 different cars a day. So what can you do? But these people are sick. If you're a collector, that's one thing. But this is where our mindset is: the individualism, not giving back. And President Obama's administration, under his administration, and Attorney General Holder, I don't know if you're aware. I think it was 2013. They put one of the oldest banks in the world out of business because of tracing these international funds that were being hidden in offshore accounts that weren't being tax not being paid on. I think it was the Wigman Bank in Switzerland, 400-year-old bank, that these individuals been stacking slave money for 400 years of our people. And I read, I believe it was in the Barron's or the Wall Street, where offshore monies being hidden in accounts by individual Americans, not corporations, individual wealthy European Americans, as much as 300 trillion have been hidden. Trillion. Okay. But under Attorney General Holder and the IRS, I think they were able to identify 16 to 30 trillion that they could get their hands on, and documentation of Americans who haven't paid taxes on funds that they should be paying taxes on. So if you're building this kind of wealth for individualism, this is what this country encourages. This is why they have a problem with Congress, because you can buy them off. They've created a Congress corporations are humans too. Supreme Court has passed that law.
Right.
But if you study it, it's the law that the British had on the East Indian Company or the East African Company. Companies that were people, and the king or the queen could give them their own soldiers or support their own interests of these English companies in these colonies. This is what they're going back to, for all that liberty that they fought for. So America has a problem of not just us. It has a problem of an identity crisis of what they're supposed to be doing by the so-called founding fathers for himself. And if they can't keep that promise to its own people, what do you think they can do for us? We're in this thing that black people, Negroes in this country, think that if they had whatever they need, this is one of the things that Malcolm was concerned about. If you have full liberty tomorrow as a black person, does that mean you have arrived? Does that mean you do not want for your brother what you have? We'd have to want the liberty and the freedom of Africans, Asians, even Europeans, everyone. If you're a human being, that's what he meant by human rights. You should want for your brother or sister what you want for yourself. That's who we are as a people. That's our humanity. It doesn't mean if we got the liberty here tomorrow, we can rest on our laurels. Liberty is something that you constantly have to be diligent about. And that's what Malcolm was about. And he spoke on that. He was willing to die for it. And Dr. King was too. So as long as you're not willing to live up to what it takes to not only create a civilization, but be part of those who are civilized and human, not the idiots that are individualists. The individualists or individualism will kill us all. I know that's the way Malcolm was raised. That's the way I was raised. You can't be dealing and thinking of a dollar just for yourself. Not saying I'm against economics or dollar, because the money system, we created it. We created it, and it's thousands of years old. There's documentation on it, brother. You can get it. But what it's supposed to serve and what it's supposed to do, and the exchange rate or bartering, there's a system. But and these people know that, but they've taken it to a demonic level where it's individualism. So we're following that, and our people are into that. Those who have no. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I want to ask you one more last thing. It concerns what's going on. What's the situation with Malcolm Shabazz? Is there anything about his case? Is there an update to that case?
On his death?
Yes, sir.
I don't know anything about it. A sister asked at our memorial a few years ago to sign a petition. To Justice Department to investigate, and I signed it as a family member in support of Malcolm. Daughter, Kabila. As far as I'm concerned, Kabila is still my baby, so I can't. If this is in support of her, I'm not going to refuse. But I haven't been brought up to date as to what's happening. On a personal note, I have my reservations. I'm not. My attitude is, unless I or those I know have done something themselves. I'm coming from a family background. Unless I find and do justice, I'm not concerned anybody else doing justice for me. I'm not going to ask somebody else something that I wouldn't do myself. So I still have concerns about how that happened. And at some point in time, if I have the time and wherewithal, I will do my own research on it. I'm familiar with the situation excuse me, in Mexico. I've traveled throughout South America. I'm familiar with how things operate in Mexico and what goes on. I'm familiar with the area that the young man was involved in. I even mentioned to one of my cousins not to even go down alone and, by herself, to go with someone, because I know what can happen in South America and what people are going through there in Mexico. The tyranny in Mexico. And the tyranny that's going on in Mexico is not all Mexican. There's foreign interference and there's foreign interest. Even as some of you hear in America, they say if Americans weren't such an addicted nation. And that's partly true. But it's not addicted to drugs. It's addicted not only to drugs, but it's addicted to money. And money laundering. It's more to it than what you see in the popular media, all right, or some young man or thug on the street. And these people are killing each other for money. And they're not killing each other for money because they're high on drugs. They're high on the dollar. And they'll kill their own people. You have indigenous people and native people killing each other for this man's dollar. Their own currency ain't worth squat. Very little. The currency of the world is the dollar, the pound, the Swiss. Okay? That's the currency. And the euro, and that's a little shaky, but the dollar and the pound and the Swiss franc is the currency. The only other dependable currency is gold. And that fluctuates. But the dollar is, and the pound is strong. And the powers that be that control this internationally, even for the drug cartels. The drug cartels could not do a thing. The monetary exchanges in the world tomorrow on the dollar issue could cut that by doing something different. But then there's other currencies. But taking these drugs and what have you and using it as a currency, it happens. And when you're around that kind of environment, in a nation or in a community that's surrounded by that, and you expose yourself to that, such as did happen with Malcolm. He was a young man that was not knowledgeable. You know, it's not like Malcolm, who there were people that were around him informing him, and we did try to advise him. There were people that had his best interest, but then there were people that who didn't have his best interest, and he was swayed. You know, they weren't family members, that's for sure. But, you know, he was swayed, a young man. You know, when Malcolm was in prison, and they're telling this young man, you're the next Malcolm, you're the next this and that and the other. Malcolm had brothers and sisters and people who cared for him. He had guidance when he was, before he went in incarceration, while he was in incarceration, when he came out from incarceration. He was surrounded by an organization and leadership that cared for him, and that was family. It wasn't Elijah Muhammad's family, all right? But his family as far as a father figure. But his family was that of his brothers and his sisters. That kept him grounded. That kept him grounded, not the Nation of Islam. And my Uncle Wilford, you know, spoke on this in an ABC broadcast, I think 15, 20 years ago. That and you should listen to that. So this young man, he didn't have this. He didn't have family who cared about him. He had people who were around him that cared about celebrityship and a dollar. And as long as our people are focused on being so-called celebrity and a dollar, they're not going to do anything. Nothing. Not a thing. But being individuals for themselves and doing for themselves. They're not doing for our people, they're doing for themselves. And the attitude is, well, you know, if I can do something for somebody else and get something for me. No, if you're going to give something, you have to give your all. And if you get something fall your way after you give your all the better to it. But you can't, no nation or no people become liberated thinking about oneself. It hasn't happened. It never will. It has not happened. There's no leader at no time that liberated a nation or leaders if you were solely thinking about yourself first. It hasn't happened. You can't name one. Name me one, and I'll show you where that wasn't the person that did it. Look at the people that were around: Walter Zulu, Stephen Mbeki, Nelson Mandela. They could have walked out many a time. All those years. But they weren't thinking of themselves. They stayed steadfast. Or Castro, or Lumumba, or Nkrumah. No. Or Julius Nyerere. None of them. And they became leaders because they never sold themselves for a dollar or considered themselves first. They considered the nation first. They considered the people first. They didn't consider themselves first. And of course, their family sometimes, immediate family sacrifice.
Right.
You know, that's always. That's always. And if you have women that can stay with you and deal with that, fine. But then a lot of these leaders, you know, some of them had more than one wife or one woman. So that kind of kept things in a balance. But and that's a fact. That's not a myth. So somebody think that's that's all these men had one woman. I'm not talking about one woman as a sex thing. I'm talking about a woman that was a sister or a mother or act as a wife. That's what I'm talking about. Right. I'm not talking here from you had 3 or 4 women in the bed with you. We as men, you know, we come through this world from these women, and we need their leadership as much as they need our support. And if you look at all these men, they had mothers, sisters, aunts They weren't all men, but so little. You look at the Vietnamese Revolution, you look at the Chinese Revolution, look at any revolution. There's a woman there. You look at the Indian Revolution. There's always some of the strongest are the women. They just, because we live in such a male-oriented society, they done it with Jesus. Now they're starting to admit Jesus had a couple of women. You know? He did. They know it. They know it. But they didn't want to admit it. That's the European way of thinking, dominating and controlling, oppressive, aggressive behavior. So, you know, that's something that this young man, he had, his grandmother wasn't here. You know, his mother was dealing with what she had to deal with. And his aunt, he had some aunts, particularly Ilyasa, she was doing the best she could as an aunt. But, you know, you have to stay vigilant. And like Malcolm, my mother let him stay in jail. She put him in there, basically. He didn't have to be in no jail, brother. This Manny Marable people up here at Columbia University and this committee book by committee, they'd done their research with the records and the history. Malcolm had no business being in jail. But my mother, she did it to me. She told me once, I'll let the white man, if I can't teach you nothing, I'll let the white man keep you in jail. Maybe he can teach you something. Well, that's what she did with Malcolm. Okay? Because he just, you know, she was determined that he step into the footsteps of his father. He didn't want to do that. He didn't want to do that. He wasn't intending on doing that. But this was a way that she could tie him down and have some control instead of him running back and forth and having a good time. And the rest of the family went along with it. Let him stay there. Then we can handle him and get some sense into his head. So the same with this young man. No different. He needed somebody to sit on him. And whether it was prison or whether it was family. And he, you know, as we know now, he might have come out too soon because he didn't have nobody out here. You know, his mother and his aunts, I mean, they tried, but there was no, you know, you have to have male images around. And when my mother had Uncle Malcolm, you don't hear about it, but he had positive male images around. He just didn't have his aunts, but he had uncles and cousins that he was surrounded with here in Boston. But he didn't want to listen. There was a lot of that. But, you know, he wanted a good time.
Right.
You know, and enjoy himself. And he just wouldn't listen. And short of, you know, giving him a beating and hog tie him in the house all the way and throwing away the lock and key. So this was one of their methods. You know, it was one of their methods. And my father, who was his best friend, one of his best friends, he didn't want to spank Uncle Malcolm. My father was born in 1915. Malcolm was born in 1925.
Right.
And they, you know, he grew up with the little brothers in Michigan, went to school with them from middle school. So it was my father, actually, that how Malcolm got to hang out in Boston, because my dad knew where to go to all the dance halls and what have you. And then Malcolm's eldest brother, Earl, he wanted to hang out where Earl was an entertainer with Billie Holiday and the rest of them, and the Nicholas brothers at the time. So, you know, that was an influence in the big bands and all that stuff. And this is something else that you don't, you know, get in somebody's so-called definitive book on Malcolm. But Billie Holiday and Earl Jr. and his influence on Malcolm, and the entertainment world. They just say, oh, that's Malcolm's myth. Yeah, well, they don't deal with a lot of, if you notice in that Manny Marable book, there is no interview done or conversation with Malcolm's daughters or Betty. There's only so-called comments from somewhere else. There's no interview of me. He's claiming that he did. I never met Manny Marable in my life. He's only met my mother in passing. He's never interviewed my mother. He's never interviewed my father. He takes interviews or so-called stuff from Bruce Perry's book when these people were alive, and his interviews that were given truly, he prints disinformation, particularly about my father and some of the stuff he got from my father. And he knew very well what happened, husband and wife relationship, and what was going on with my father. But he chose to, Bruce Perry, I'm speaking now, he chose to print something else to make it look the way he wanted to make it look, what my father said and what was going on between, husband and wife, and going through a divorce and court settlement, and my father having his personal problem with his women. He didn't write that.
Well, was Bruce Perry an FBI agent by any chance? Was he a former FBI agent or something?
He might have been informed. There's no way he could have been writing and doing what he did at the time without the FBI interviewing, because Bruce Perry was following family members from 1966, 67 till 1980s. In the 80s, his book, him and David Wolfenstein. All these people are socialists. You see, what our people need to understand, Manny Marable, Bruce Perry, David Wolfenstein, these are all these white socialist workers' party, okay? Or communist party, white communist party, mainly white socialist workers' party. And the white socialist workers' party, East Coast and West Coast, their aim was to do one thing, to control the books and speaking and lectures of Malcolm. And it is partly Aunt Betty's fault because, I shouldn't say that. That's incorrect. When I say Aunt Betty's fault, because she signed off on it, but the not good legal representation comes to state. She's following her attorney's legal advice, but she had given the Socialist Workers Organization, the Pathfinder Press. I don't know if you ever heard of them. They had several stores, bookstores around the country, and for many years the Pathfinder Press made their money off of Malcolm X literature and speeches. And when the contract ran out with Betty Shabazz, and she wanted to negotiate the contract in more of a favorable for her and her family, they didn't want to do it. So it didn't continue, and they were angry at that. But their bookstores and selling of the books started going downhill. And so how do you arrest that problem? They've approached me. In fact, there was and they're very racist and sly in their dealings. There was almost a murder here in Boston, Massachusetts, from one of the local leaders of Black United Front, who they were trying to get involved in a situation where they wanted to get black people here to support their program about economic program here in Boston to so-called help black folks, and to go forth and sue U.S. government, I think, or small businessmen's association, or whatever that is by the U.S. government, how they wanted to tell the Black United Front here and Mal King, who ran for mayor, that U.S. government is discriminating against black people in small business loans, which local offices were. But this Socialist Workers' Party group here wanted to get blacks involved here, and one of the leaders initially was going for it to sue the federal government, but then later on changed his mind and saw the problem, and this European American stabbed this brother, made him paralyzed the rest of his life. Called him the N-word and all kinds of things. These people are very racist. They have no love of what they think they can exploit. These white organizations, communist parties or socialist workers' party, white from the European perspective, never had any good wishes. No white organization in America ever had the well wishes of black people for their independence, not even the abolitionists. They were all for when you do your research, they were all for the freedom of black folks and the freedom of you thinking, but thinking the way we want you to think. Freedom of expression, but the way we want you to express yourself. Then it was all right. As long as you express, but if you started expressing yourself, and Malcolm talks on this, but if you start expressing yourself the way you want to express yourself and with your ideology, no, you're wrong. You can't do that. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not capable. We taught you this way. This is the way you're supposed to think. And you thinking some other kind of way, that's wrong. How could you come up with that kind of idea or thought? You can't think other than how we tell you to think. And so if you go for that and feel that you're inept or incapable, that's how you're going to perform. And so that's the problem with this young man. And he had no support and no understanding. He hadn't studied while he was incarcerated. He hadn't done any studying. He hadn't found a new way. So it was his lack of guidance. That's all. And this led to his death. So normally I would not be willing to support the U.S. government of spending time and money on this sort of thing. Just as I am not really interested, because we know of the U.S. government opening the case on Malcolm X and seeing who killed him. This is just, if the U.S. government wanted to do that and they were sincere, you don't have to do a whole media thing. We do it as a family. We do it. Go to them as a family. We do it. Don't have to do a media. That's waste of time.
Did the younger Malcolm, do you have kids by any chance?
Pardon?
Do you have any children? Okay.
Yes. As far as I know, he has 2.
Okay.
Oh, the younger. Oh, you mean the one that passed away or the one that's alive now?
No, the one that passed away after they died in 2013, Malcolm Shabazz.
Yes. As far as I understand, he has 2 children.
Okay. All right. Well, Brother Collins, I want to thank you once again for spending a lot of time with us to discuss some of these things that need to be discussed. And I want to thank you for all your work. In the words of Greg DeGelton, we love you madly and keep on producing and pushing. Yes,
and I hope you and your audience will help assist us in restoring the historic national landmark, the Malcolm X L. Collins House in Boston. It's recognized by the National Trust in Washington for Historic Preservation. So we are restoring the property. I am the owner and curator, me and my family, but it is a historical landmark recognized by the City of Boston and Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and there is a 10-acre Malcolm X Park that has been memorialized that has, it's not just a park, but it's a working park with community center, public pool, playground, football field, basketball court, tennis court, a community program after school, and outdoor pool, and indoor soccer. And it's a 10-acre facility, park, and the Malcolm X L. Collins House is right next to it, and hopefully sometime this year, it will be completed, that the Roxbury community will have historic Black Heritage Trail, and the Malcolm X Ella Collins House will be part of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Black Heritage Trail. So I hope your listeners will come visit Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the city of Boston. There's a lot of history here, Black history, African American history. The African American Museum Beacon Hill is here, one of the leading museums, Black museums in the country. They also have a museum out on the islands in Nantucket where the Black shippers, sailors of the 17th and 18th century, that were sailors, some of the first settlers settling with the Indians. That's here. There's a lot of great history, Black history here in Boston. So I hope the listeners will have the opportunity to come visit us all, and enjoy your time. And for your listeners, you know, we live in one of the leading sports cities in America. We have all the championship teams. Right. I know your listeners will love that.
And what would be the best way to contact you?
Got you here now. Huh?
What would be the best way to contact you? You know, if they want to see the house and whatnot in the park. Is there a good way to contact you all?
Yes, you can email me if you wish at MX. The M is in Michael, X is in X-ray, the number 7, TH, T as in Tom, H as in Henry, Child, CHILD, at gmail.com, or you can go on the National Preservation for Historic Properties in Washington, D.C. They have a website, and you can type in the Malcolm X Ella Collins House. So just Google or Bing the Malcolm X House in Boston, and it'll lead you to the city, state, and National Trust historic site. And you learn, you know, you can get updates from that, and we hope to, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts this year is setting up a museum in the Roxbury area that will exhibit some of the historic Black history as well as the tour. So your listeners, stay tuned to that, and just Google Malcolm X House in Boston, and that'll take you wherever you want to go.
All right, Brother Collins, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it, and you have a blessed night.
Yes, sir, and all the thanks, and I hope I'll hear from you again come Black History. I mean, the May 19th that we have this year. It's the 50th year.
Oh yeah, this is a very important year. You're gonna hear from me. I appreciate you reaching out to me and keeping me in the loop.
Yes, sir. And also, just so you know, on the 21st of February, there is a celebration event for the 50th year at the Malcolm X Dr. Betty Shabazz Cultural Center in New York City, up on Broadway, across from Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. The event will start at 2 p.m. to 6, and weather permitting, we will be touring all the historical sites in the city of New York where Malcolm spoke.
Oh, wow. That's a big crowd. Is it May 21st?
February 21st.
Okay.
Where there is, we're starting out from the Malcolm X Dr. Betty Shabazz Cultural Center in New York on Broadway, across from Columbia University Presbyterian Hospital. And it starts at 2 p.m. to 6.
Excellent. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right. Good night.